As you can read by the title text on this video, the real cure to racism is Islam. And this is an argument I had the argument with Jared Taylor, in fact, pointing out that there are identities that supersede race, and this guy's about to reinforce my argument. I don't think Islam is the best cure for racism, but I actually agree. I think Islam probably is, overall, a cure for racism. At least, Islamism is a cure for racism. But let's begin, shall we?
Malcolm X once famously said, "America needs to understand Islam because this is one religion which erases from society the race problem."
That's true. It absolutely is true. Islam is not concerned with what race you are, and the identity of Muslim is non-racial. It's anyone can be a Muslim, and anyone then becomes a proponent of Islam, and that becomes the main identity.
The fact of the matter is, Islam has all the keys necessary to defeat racism from society and leave no room for such kinds of discrimination.
And that's absolutely true. It brings with it a whole host of new forms of discrimination, such as being based on gender or religion, but hey, and sexuality as well, of course. But hey, it's just the consequence of it being an Abrahamic religion, really, isn't it?
In case you're wondering how it works, let me break things down. Islam is colorblind.
That's racist.
For starters, Islam teaches that there is no distinction in terms of a person's color or race.
Well, I can't really see the racial subjectivists being too fond of that. I mean, if black people don't have a unique life experience that literally no other race can share, then they can't be victims, and they can't be special. And so chanting black power is going to be a bit anachronistic under Islam. I don't see it washing.
In fact, the only purpose different races and cultures serve is for us to build bridges in getting to know one another, as clearly mentioned in the Quran.
That's great. And that's the only thing it says, I'm sure. And we don't really need to worry about the other things the Quran says. They're not very important. You know, the bits about women, don't worry about those.
This means that such diversity is not a means of discrimination, but rather a means of education.
Now that's very interesting, isn't it? Stealing their code words. Diversity. Islam is diverse. That's true. There are Muslims of all races, all creeds. They all follow the same prophet.
Diversity is a miracle of God. The color of our skin and all our unique cultural features are God-given traits that none of us chose to inherit at birth. The differences we share are in fact all signs of God's magnificence and a
Okay, the problem is I'm an atheist, and being an atheist means that I can be killed in certain Islamic countries. So, like I said, you know, they definitely bring in a whole host of new discriminations, ones that I personally don't like, about as much as I don't like racism. I mean, the difference between, like, racism in the West and Islam's treatment of non-Muslims and atheists, specifically atheists, is that one group kills the out group and the other doesn't. So, you know, just putting that out there. Maybe we should choose the thing that doesn't kill the out group, because killing people is bad, unless they're infidels.
reflection of His infinite creative power, as God clearly mentions in the Quran. It is not through such characteristics.
I just want to point out that God said so in the Quran isn't an argument any more than Spider-Man says so in his comic book. They're both fiction, they're both made up, God isn't real, neither's Spider-Man, and literally saying, well, God said it, means I have no backing for what I've just said.
We realize the greatness of ourselves, but rather we realize and appreciate the greatness of the one who created us, Allah. Mankind.
You can see how an atheist is going to have problems with this, and one of the interesting things I think is going to find itself a fundamental incompatibility with the radical left and Islam is that many people in the radical left are atheists. They have specifically rejected Christianity and God as being right-wing oppressive social constructs, and therefore they can't really take on another right-wing oppressive social construct in the form of Islam, or at least they can't and be consistent. But then, again, consistency is a bit of a tall order, isn't it?
Mankind was all created from clay.
It must be true, God said it.
Islam teaches that all human beings were essentially created from the same inherent substance, earth. So it makes no sense to consider ourselves better than one another when we are all designed from the same components, regardless of our different cultures.
See, I told you, Jared. They literally don't care about race. That's actually one of the ways that Islam solves the problems of the Middle East, incidentally. By giving people a shared identity above their ethnic identity, it means that they're actually more trusting of one another. This is something that I can't remember, I think it was an article I read, that ISIS had been effectively facilitating business between businessmen of different ethnic groups in the Middle East, who would otherwise not trust the other person for being part of a different ethnic group. But ISIS put forward the identity of Islam and Muslim, and that became the supreme identity by which people viewed themselves and the other world, and the other people in the world around them. And apparently that facilitated trust between businessmen. Again, I just want to point out this isn't the ideal solution in my mind, but it is at least not lies.
Virtue is only through righteousness. In the eyes of God,
it's interesting how he said righteousness, and the text said piety.
Our skin color or race grants us no favors. Rather, it is simply our deeds and sincerity that counts. In the Prophet's farewell sermon, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made this point very clear when he stated that white skin is not better than black skin, nor is black skin better than white skin. Rather, it is our righteousness that makes all the difference.
That's true. I actually have a reading of Muhammad's last sermon on my Ancient Recitations channel. So if you want to go and listen to it, you can.
We are all slaves of God.
See, now this is really where I have a problem. I don't really want to be a slave of anyone, even if it's God. And this is the thing about Islam, it means submission. Because you are submitting yourself willingly, apparently, to become a slave to God. I don't really think that's the mindset I want to carry forward, especially as we can never actually hear God's opinion on this. I mean, we're all slaves to God, therefore racism's over. Not sure if that's the ideal solution. I'm just saying I think there might be better ones.
While we may all come from different nationalities, cultures, and backgrounds, at the end of the day, our overarching identity as Muslims dictates that we are all servants of God. There is no superior race nor culture. We are all equal servants.
Well. Let's talk about some of the things you're omitting. I mean, let's talk about religion specifically, because there are certainly superior religions, and there are certainly people like, apostates who really have to be punished for their opinions, because God made them wrong. God made them to not believe in him, for some reason.
Of God, who are in as much need of God as everyone else. Nationalism is prohibited. In Islam, it is prohibited to boast about our race or culture to the extent that it belittles other people.
Honestly, this is starting to make me feel like somewhat of a nationalist. I mean, I've always been a bit of a latent nationalist, but if you won't sit there and tell me that people can't be proud of their culture, that just strikes me as backwards. I mean, your culture is made up of the people who make it, and if they're good people with a good culture, then it's through mission of action that occurred. I mean, it's not like, Afghan men raping 10-year-old boys and using them as dancing girls or something. I mean, that's an obviously inferior culture that I think we should shame. In fact, I've got another episode of All Cultures Are Beautiful coming soon, which is it's so good. It is just so good. But no, I'm not ashamed of shaming people because of their culture. You can change your culture anytime you like, because your culture is what you do. And if what you do is backwards and damaging to other people, then you should be shamed, if not outright physically stopped from doing what you're doing. But don't let me interrupt you castrating little girls. Carry on.
The Prophet warned us all about the dangers of such tribalism and stated that he is not one of us who fights for the sake of it. As mentioned before, the only standard to determine a person's superiority is through their level of righteousness.
It's not through their merit. It's not through their accomplishments. It's through their piety. Who is the most pious Muslim? Not really the standard that I think we should be reaching for. And I think it might be one of the reasons why the Middle East is going backwards rather than forwards when it comes to, technological development. Is there a reason why Al-Wahhab made such a well, no, not even Al Wahhab. Why the Saudi king in the 1920s had such difficulty introducing the motor car and the television to Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's not because these people literally want to live as Muhammad lived, and therefore technological innovation is actually antithetical to the ideology and religion, is it? Okay, I asked rhetorically because I know that's exactly what it is. And it's it's striving for righteousness instead of striving for merit that will inevitably hamstring the human race. And all innovation, all development, societal, technological, scientific, will always be pushing against the oppressive weight of the dogma of Islam.
Which is, by the way, a trait that can only ever truly be determined by God alone. Islam defeats racism, and only once it's practiced can be defeated from society today.
So basically, we should all become Muslims with the blessings of progressivism. I mean, wouldn't it just be nice if all of those Christians in America suddenly just converted to Islam to end racism? Because, I mean, you know, Christianity was just so big on dividing people on the basis of their race. You know, it was turn the other cheek unless he's a